everyone, it's Miss Pak from Mirror Lake. Thanks for joining us today. Last week, if you remember, we talked about syllables. Let's see if you remember. Here they are. Whoops. So syllables are blank in a word. Do you remember what that is? That's right. Syllables are beats in a word. So remember, we could clap it out if you have to. So let's try this just to kind of refresh your memory. The word television, how many syllables do you hear in that? You try. I got 4. Did you get 4? 4 syllables. Television. I hear 4 beats in that word. Try the word computer now. Did you try in your head? Are you sure? I got 3. Did you get 3? Computer. That has 3 syllables or 3 beats in a word. So today while we're reading, we're going to be looking for those 3 or 4 syllable words. It's great to have something to look for again while you're reading. So let's take a look at our target for today when we read our book. So the learning target is, I will look for 3 to 4 syllable words in a text. Here's an example of something you could make, again, in a reading journal, or if you want to follow along on just scratch paper, or just kind of follow along with us. Here's a 3-syllable word over here, syllable, that has 3 syllables. And 4 or more, that's kind of a challenge because those tend to usually be bigger words, like the word motorcycle. I hear 4 syllables in that word. So today when we're reading, let's look for those 3 to 4 syllable words. I have a literary nonfiction book for you today. Literary nonfiction means it's written like a story, like a fiction book, but it's a true story. Maybe you've heard of her. It's about Rosa Parks. This book is titled, If a Bus Could Talk, The Story of Rosa Parks by Faith Ringgold. Take a look at that picture there. This morning, a strange-looking bus pulled up at my stop. It didn't look anything like my usual bus, but it was on time and I didn't want to be late for school, so I decided to take it. The door opened and a voice called out, "Step on up, young lady." I got on thinking, I'll ask the driver which bus this is. Does this character look familiar to you? But the driver was not in his seat. I paid my fare and looked around for him. There were lots of passengers, but their faces weren't familiar. I started to ask one of them if I was on the right bus, but before I could, the door closed and the bus pulled away from the curb with no one on the driver's seat. The sudden start sent me reeling down the aisle and I landed in a seat, holding on for dear life. None of the other passengers seemed to notice anything was wrong. "Stop this bus and let me off," I shouted. "I want a bus with a driver." So would I. "Please don't take that seat, Marcy," someone said. "How do you know my name? Which one of you is speaking?" I asked, looking around. But the passengers were talking among themselves, reading, or just staring out the window. "This is a special bus, Marcy, and you are sitting in a special seat reserved for a very special person." "Amen, amen," chorused the passengers. "What bus is this?" I asked. "This used to be the Cleveland Avenue bus, but now it's the Rosa Parks Bus. She is the patron saint of the civil rights movement. One day a year, we reserve that seat in her name. Take another seat, and I will tell you all about her." Now the voice seemed to be coming from the bus itself. I could hardly believe it. I was on a talking bus. Trembling with fear, but curious as I could be, I took a seat across the aisle and settled down to hear this remarkable story. Now I want to go back. I'm trying to pay attention to this story, but I also know I have a goal of looking for those 3 to 4 syllable words. You tell me if you see any in here. I see one here, the word passengers. Passengers. I could easily write that down in my 3 syllables column. So again, while you're reading, That's something fun. You can always have your journal or paper right next to you so you can keep track and have your pencil out. I have a marker with me so that right when I see it, I can quickly write it down. Rosa Mccauley, the first child of James and Leona Mccauley, was born on February 4th, 1913, in Tuskegee, Alabama. When Rosa was 2 years old, her father, a skilled carpenter and house builder, left the family and went up north looking for work. Her mother took Rosa and Sylvester, her baby brother, to live on their grandfather's small farm in Pine Level, Alabama. They worked hard there, raising chickens, calves, vegetables, nuts, and fruit. Rosa helped her grandfather clear weeds and tend the crops. The family also picked cotton in neighboring fields. I hear and see a lot of 3 and 4 syllable words, but I'm just going to keep going right now. But you could always pause for each page or wait a couple pages before you jot them down. From Rosa's earliest childhood, she could remember scary nights when the Ku Klux Klan, a band of hateful white men dressed in white hooded robes, would ride past their farm shooting off rifles to frighten the black people. Rosa knew that the Klan had burned churches and beaten, tortured, and lynched many black people. There were times when Rosa's family slept in their clothes so they could run if the Klan decided to burn their house down in the middle of the night. And it's okay to feel some feelings, being scared or sad or worried or angry. All those feelings are natural to feel, especially when you're reading a true story like this. Despite the fearful conditions, Rosa's grandfather was an outspoken old man who made it known that he had a loaded shotgun and was not afraid to use it to defend his home and family. Grandfather Sylvester instilled a sense of pride in his children and grandchildren, and in Rosa most of all. Rosa was a nice little girl who loved praise, but she hated the disrespectful way whites often treated black people. One day a white boy threatened to punch her, and Rosa picked up a rock and threatened to hit him back if he did. When her grandmother heard about this, she was very afraid because she knew something like that might cause Rosa to be lynched one day. When Rosa was 6 years old, she went to school. Her school had 50 to 60 children in one room and only one teacher. Whoa, normal class sizes here are about 25, but that's 50 to 60 children in one room. In Pine Level, Alabama, school for black children only went up to the 6th grade, and it was open only 5 months out of the year, while school for white children went through the 12th grade and was open for 9 months. And the white children could take a bus to school, while the black children often had to walk a long way. However, Rosa's mother, Leona, had plans for Rosa's education. Leona was a teacher in a one-room school in the village of Spring Hill. To teach there, she had to travel a long distance and then be away from her children all week. But she saved up so Rosa could further her education. When Rosa was 11, she went to Miss White's School for Girls in Montgomery, Alabama. Several years later, Rosa went on to high school at Alabama State Teachers College for Negroes. She had to drop out of school when first her grandmother and then her mother became ill. That means they got sick. Rosa's mother got well, but her grandmother later died. After Leona recovered, Rosa went back to school and got her high school diploma. But it would be a few years before Rosa could find a job using her typing and writing skills. So she took in sewing and alterations at the Montgomery Fair department store. And I'm looking at that big word, alterations. How many syllables did you hear? Try it. Alterations. Hey, that's a 4-syllable word. One day on the way home from work, the bus driver told Rosa to get off and enter at the back of the bus after she had paid her fare. Then he drove off, leaving her in the street. This was common practice then. It is no wonder that Black people would often walk a mile or more to and from work rather than ride the segregated buses. The buses were the worst form of segregation because Black people could only sit in the back of the bus. If there were no whites in the middle section, Blacks could sit there, but only if no white people were left standing. Black people couldn't sit in the same row with whites, even if there was an empty seat in that row. It was during those times I got to know and love Rosa Parks, said the talking bus. She was a great lady with quiet dignity despite all the cruelty she faced because of the color of her skin. And remember, even as I'm reading, I have all the feels too. I'm angry and sad and can't believe this is happening. But it's important to know about the history of what has been going on. But then something good happened. Rosa married a very nice man named Raymond Parks. Parks, as she called him, was a Black man like Grandfather Sylvester. He demanded to be treated with respect. Parks was light-skinned and had grown up in an all-white neighborhood. Although he looked like a white person, he was not allowed to go to the white school, and the nearest Black school was too far away. So he had been taught to read and write by his mother. Despite the fact that he had very little formal education, Parks was well-spoken and well-read on the important issues affecting his people. It was Parks who encouraged Rosa to return to school and graduate. Raymond Parks, a barber by trade, had been a longtime member of the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That's what that stands for. Mrs. Parks soon became a member, too. In no time, she was appointed secretary of the Montgomery branch and could use her education to help her people. She also served as a youth leader and organized a citywide youth conference. Parks worked hard to free 4 young men called the Scottsboro Boys, who were jailed for a crime they did not commit. Parks was also an activist for voter registration, and he and Rosa held regular meetings of the Voters League in their home. That was how Rosa finally registered to vote after being turned down 3 times before. Man, she never gives up. One fateful day, December 1st, 1955, Mrs. Parks took this very bus home from work. The bus driver, whose name was James Blake, told Mrs. Parks to get up and give her seat to a white man. There were other Black people sitting in the same section, and all of them would have to get up so that the white man could sit down. Rosa knew that the segregation laws were unfair, and right then and there, she decided to do something about it. I agree that sounds very unfair. She told the driver she would not give up her seat. This was the same bus driver who had wronged her before. I'm thinking about what happens, and maybe this is the part that you know what Rosa Parks is most famous for. When Mrs. Parks refused to give up her seat, Blake called the police and had her arrested and taken to jail for breaking the segregation laws. It is for this singular act of courage that one day, a year later, Mrs. Parks' seat has been reserved, said the talking bus, and why we don't want to see Blake driving this bus ever again. Amen, amen, chorused the passengers. I'm going to stop there right now. You'll have to tune in tomorrow to find out what happens next. Luckily, that story doesn't end there. But let's recap what we did so far. So while we were reading that story, not only were we trying to pay attention to that literary nonfiction book about Rosa Parks, but we also looked for 3 to 4 syllable words within the text. I just wrote down a couple that I found on random pages. Remember, it's nice to have a running record. That means continuing your search for those certain texts or whatever you're looking for. We have separated out 3 to 4 syllable words or more. Some words have more than 4 syllables, and that's awesome if you can find those. It's fun to make it a competition between a brother or sister or a sibling. or someone else in your family during a read aloud or a nighttime reading and say, hey, that's 3-syllable words. And you're keeping that in your brain while you're either listening to stories, reading them online, or reading them in an actual book. So awesome job with that. I know we're not quite finished with the story yet, but I wanted to kind of go over a good thing for good readers to do is think about, do we understand what's happening so far in the story? So I wanted to do a quick SWIBS, if you remember that from last week. If not, no worries. Here we go. When I'm saying SWIBS, I'm asking for just a very brief comprehension check. So we do that by somebody, that's the main character. In is the setting or where a story takes place. Wanted is the motivation. So what did the main character want? But we say the big but is the problem in the story. And I joke that with the big but, that's a big problem in the story. Usually books have many little problems. We want to think of the main one that the main character faced. And then the solution, the solution, that the problem and solution always have to connect. And so that's, again, SWIBS. So parents, if you're listening, you can always ask your child to do the SWIBS on a book that they've read, even if we didn't finish it. So again, we're not finished with that book yet, but let's take a look at what we have. Luckily, I have it written down for you. And let's see if you already thought about the same things as I did. Who would you say the main character was? I hope you said Rosa, and I agree. And then do you remember what state they were in? Awesome if you even remember the specific city, but it was in Alabama. And good readers, again, can always go right back to the text too. It's not cheating to go check on that. So here's what we have so far. Again, you can put it in a little chart like this. So the somebody was Rosa Parks in Alabama, wanted. And what did she want? We left off right at that it was just about to happen. She wanted to stay in her seat instead of standing up for a white man while riding the bus. Then during that time, the driver got angry and called the police. That was a problem. So Rosa was arrested. And that's how we left the story off for today. And I'm going to show you one more. As a third grader or higher, or even second grader or first graders, we can challenge you to write all that in a complete sentence. So it looks nice and neat like this. It says Rosa Parks in Alabama, go ahead and read with me, wanted to stay in her seat instead of standing for a white man, but the bus driver got angry and called the police, so Rosa was arrested. Again, super excited that the story does not end there, so tune in tomorrow to check that out. We just did a basic comprehension to see if we understood the story of what we read so far. See you tomorrow, guys.
Hello, third grade mathematicians and families, and anyone else who's tuning in to do some third grade math exploration with me today. This is Mrs. Nelson, back with you this week. Last week, we were exploring and learning about and practicing multiplication. We talked about what multiplication means, what it looks like if we were to draw a picture to match a multiplication equation. We practiced reading multiplication equations by looking at the numbers and thinking of them as some number of equal groups that we put together or added up together to find a total amount. This week, we are going to be exploring division in math. So division is another math operation that we use to solve problems, and it is connected to multiplication because we are still thinking about equal groups. So all of our practice last week with equal groups will come in handy this week as we move into division and talking about what that looks like. So on my whiteboard here, I have the word division written, and underneath the word division is the symbol that we see in math that means to divide. So when you see in an equation that little line with a dot above and a dot below that looks like this, that's how you know you're doing division. And underneath that, I have the definition or what division really means. So division is just about splitting a total amount into equal groups. So you're starting with a big total of something and you're breaking it apart into smaller equal groups. One thing to remember, one thing that helps you remember what division really means and what it's all about, think about sharing something fairly with other people or a group of people sharing fairly out of a big amount of something. And a real life example where we see division is dealing cards. So if you've ever played a game where you had a deck of cards and you're dealing them out to the players, that is division. You're dividing a whole deck of cards up into equal groups so that each player has the same number of cards. So that's one real life example we can think about when we're thinking about what it means to divide. The learning target for today is hopefully by the end of this lesson, you will understand what division means and what it looks like. So kind of similar with what we did the first day of talking about multiplication, we're going to think about how to read a division equation using the words equal groups. So I gave a couple sentence frames that I'm hoping by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to look at a division equation and read it using one of those sentence frames. So for example, looking at an equation and reading it as blank divided into blank equal groups equals, and then the answer, which either represents how many are in each group, or another sentence frame you can use to read a division equation would be blank divided into groups of blank equals blank groups. So in that case, we would be finding the number of groups. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the numbers in a division equation can mean, what they represent. And then I'm also hoping that in addition to being able to read a division equation using those words, also at the end of this lesson today, you'll be able to look at a division equation and draw a picture to help you solve it. A picture that helps you show how many equal groups you can make, or a picture that shows how many are in each of the equal groups that you're dividing by. So that's our goal for today, being able to read a division equation using those words and being able to draw a picture that matches a division equation. We also on the screen see some important words that we want to remember and understand when we're learning about division. Of course, knowing what division means is important. So again, division is just splitting up a total amount into equal groups. Remembering that equal just means we have the same amount or value or number in each group. An equation is just the name for these number sentences that have are numbers that are connected with some kind of a math operation. And today's equations, we're talking about division. And also what's really important about equations is they always have an equal sign. So if you ever see a number sentence that does not have that equal sign, that is called an expression, and that's a little bit different. So I just wanted to make sure I reminded you about what equation means, what kind of a number sentence are we talking about. And then another word to know, to remember, and this is one we learned last week, is what an array is. And an array is a special type of math picture, and it's where we show our equal groups in rows and columns. So that is our learning target for today, what we're hoping we can do by the end of today's lesson, and some important words that we need to know and understand. I'm going to go ahead and give you a chance right now to get what you need to be successful practicing along with me today. For today's work, all you need is a piece of paper and something to write with. And if you have some objects around your house that you can grab 10 of, for example, toothpicks or paper clips or Cheerios or goldfish, something small that you could grab 10 of, that might also be a helpful thing to have for practicing today for modeling division. So grab what you need and we'll get started. So we will get back to our whiteboard in a moment and we will do some practice looking at examples of division equations and reading them using some of those words we talked about. First, though, I thought I would show a little demonstration of what division looks like using a real object. So let me see if I can show you what I have on the table here. Okay, so these are toasted oat cereal. I'm guessing we're familiar with these. And I'm showing this little pile of 10 pieces of the cereal because I thought of a real world example in my life where I use division, which is sharing a snack with my daughter. And so in this case, if I had 10 Cheerios, and my daughter's name is Lucy, if I wanted to share these Cheerios with Lucy fairly and equally so that we each got the same amount of Cheerios, I could do what we call the dealing strategy, which is where I give one Cheerio to myself and one Cheerio to Lucy, and I keep giving a Cheerio to each group until I've given all the Cheerios out. So there we have 2 equal piles, one for me and one for Lucy, of the cereal. I started out with, I'm not sure if you counted and could see, but I started out with 10 pieces of cereal altogether. And I divided those pieces of cereal into 2 equal groups because 2 people are sharing the cereal, me and Lucy. So I divided 10 by 2, or into 2 equal groups. And when I did that, I'm just going to quickly deal them back out. I ended up with 5 pieces of cereal in each group, or 5 pieces of cereal for each person. So that was just a little demonstration to show you what division really looks like. And you can practice doing that with an object that you can find around your house, that you can find 10 small little pieces of something. Could be Legos or really anything that's just around your house, and splitting that total amount into smaller groups. And you could even do more than 2 groups, but I just was using that example as one way to split 10 pieces of cereal and divide it equally between 2 people. Division equation started that matches that little situation I just demonstrated with the cereal, sharing 10 pieces of cereal equally between two people. And we saw that if we did that, and we gave one piece of cereal to me, one piece of cereal to Lucy, and we kept going, there's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. As I counted, I put one in each group, and I see that we ended up with 5 pieces of cereal each. Down below in the black dots, I have the 10 pieces of cereal drawn again. And this time I just wanted to show that another way to use a picture to solve this could be to circle groups of 2, since I'm dividing by 2. And there's a group of 2. And then I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see that I have 5 groups of 2. So whether we think about 2 equal groups of 5 or 5 equal groups of 2, those are both ways we can think about how to divide a total of 10 by 2, either splitting it into 2 equal groups or splitting it into groups of 2. Either way, our answer will be 5. Look at this equation just quickly to talk about how we could read this equation using one of these sentence frames here. So on the first blank is the number that we start with, the total that we're dividing. So in this case, we were dividing 10. So I would say 10 divided into 2 equal groups equals 5 in each group. So that would be how to read this equation that we wrote here as a sentence like this. 10 divided into 2 equal groups equals 5 in each group. Now you practice reading the equation that way. Great job. Show with this example equation before I let you try on your own is how we could have drawn our equal groups, our 2 equal groups of 5 from our total of 10 as an array. Because remember, that was a type of math picture that we talked about drawing to use to solve a multiplication equation. And we can also use the same model to solve a division equation. So instead of drawing my 2 groups of 5 in the way that I did it, where I just dealt 1 dot to one side and 1 to the other to make my 2 groups, if I want to do it in an array, I can think about how I would have maybe 2 rows, and I can add 1 dot to each row and keep going until I have drawn all 10 dots for my total. And just to show that we have divided that 10 into 2 equal groups, I'm going to circle those 2 rows of 5 so you can see that. So that's how we would have drawn an array to solve this equation. It's your turn to try. Think about this equation. 8 divided by 4 equals blank. How could you draw a picture showing a total of 8 split into equal groups of 4? Or how could you draw a picture showing a total of 8 split into 4 equal groups? and then think about how many groups of 4 you have or how many are in each group. Go ahead and try to draw a picture and think about how you would read this equation with words, and we'll talk about the answer in a second. Okay, I'm going to reveal the answer. If I wanted to figure out how many groups of 4 I could split 8 into, I could draw rows of 4. So there's one row of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my other row of 4. And just by looking at my array, I can see that 8 divided into groups of 4 is equal to 2 groups of 4. So reading this equation as a sentence, I could say 8 divided into groups of 4 equals 2 groups. Or 8 divided into 4 equal groups equals 2 in each group. How did you do? All right, thank you for joining me today on our first lesson for exploring division. And I look forward to meeting with you next time, where we will talk about how we can use repeated subtraction as a strategy to solve a division equation. Thanks again for joining me. Take care. Till next time.
Hola niños y niñas, soy la maestra Lorena Vázquez y estamos aquí en una semana nueva de aprendizaje de matemáticas. Y si recuerdan, la semana pasada aprendimos sobre la multiplicación y aprendimos que multiplicar simplemente significa combinar grupos iguales. Esta semana tenemos algo nuevo, pero sin embargo relacionado a la multiplicación. De hecho, es la operación inversa. ¿Han escuchado ese término? Inversa. Quiere decir lo opuesto. ¿Pueden adivinar qué es? Si quieren saberlo, vamos a comenzar. Bueno, niños y niñas, vamos a comenzar. Como les dije, la semana pasada estuvimos hablando de la multiplicación y la última lección se enfocó en resolver problemas matemáticos de la vida real y representar el resultado con una ecuación de multiplicación. Específicamente, estuvimos hablando sobre esta estrategia. Vamos a ver porque les dejé un trabajito para que practiquen. Ok, entonces, sabemos que podemos representar multiplicación como suma repetidas, grupos iguales, matriz y una ecuación. Así que en este específico caso les dije, ¿cuál es el resultado de 2 por 5? Y como queremos aplicarlo a la vida real, les dije que inventen o piensen en una situación. Aquí está mi ejemplo. 2 por 5. Durante una excursión al parque Rainier, dos primas, Sofía y Valentina, recogieron florecitas mientras caminaban. Cada una logró recoger 5 florecitas. ¿Cuántas florecitas recogieron en total? ¿Por qué iluminé estas palabras? Cada una es una palabra clave de la multiplicación y como fueron 5 florecitas, esto también es importante. En total, me dice que vamos a combinar las cantidades. Así que vamos a ver. Yo elegí la siguiente estrategia. Yo elegí hacer grupos iguales. Y aquí tengo mis florecitas para representar. Pero recuerden, si no tienen tiempo, como cuando estamos en clase, simplemente pueden dibujar puntos y eso podría representar una florecita. Así que vamos a ver. Sofía recogió 5 florecitas. 1, 2, 3, 4 y 5. Y Valentina también recogió 5 florecitas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Así como ya sabemos, 2 por 5 es lo mismo que 2 grupos de 5 o en este caso 5 más 5. El resultado aquí viene siendo Sofía y Valentina recogieron 5 más 5 más 10 florecitas en total. Miren qué fácil. Si su resultado salió 10, lo hicieron correctamente. Vamos a continuar. Bueno, esta semana comenzamos con algo nuevo, pero relacionado. Nuestra meta de hoy específicamente es, estoy aprendiendo diferentes maneras o estrategias para dividir. Puedo nombrar 4 formas de representar la división. ¿Pero qué es división? Anteriormente les dije que la división es la operación inversa o lo opuesto de la multiplicación. Entonces, si multiplicación es combinar grupos, entonces división tiene que ser, piensen un segundo, ¿ustedes qué piensan? En vez de juntar y combinar, lo opuesto sería separar. Entonces, la división quiere decir separar en grupos iguales. Cuando escuchen la palabra división, quiero que repitan eso. División, separar en grupos iguales. Escuchen, división. División, separar en grupos iguales. Muy bien, ahora vamos a continuar y no olviden que el lápiz y papel o pizarra les va a ser muy útil durante nuestra lección. Ok, aquí tenemos división, separar en grupos iguales. Muy bien, separar en grupos iguales. Y tenemos el ejemplo de 6 dividido por 3, igual a, y no sabemos, ¿verdad? Entonces, la primera operación que vamos a aprender es sustracción repetida, lo opuesto de sumas repetidas. Vamos a restar. 6 dividido por 3, igual a, entonces, vamos a ver. Tenemos 6 Y tenemos que restar 3 porque estamos restando o sustrayendo repetidamente. 6 menos 3 son 3 y 3 menos 3 quedan 0. Entonces, con la sustracción repetida, estamos restando hasta llegar a 0. Y para saber la respuesta, que viene siendo cuántas veces restamos, tenemos que contar. En este caso, quitamos un grupo de 3, 2 grupos de 3. 6 dividido por 3 es igual a 2. Fácil estrategia, ¿no? La siguiente estrategia es grupos iguales o compartir. ¿Alguna vez ustedes han compartido? Aquí la operación o la estrategia es muy similar a la de multiplicación. Simplemente la diferencia es que vamos a repartir o compartir equitativamente. Equitativamente, después vamos a aprender, quiere decir igual. Vamos a tomar estas gomitas que tenemos por aquí. Si yo tengo 6, el mismo ejemplo, 6 dividido por 3, cada quien vamos contando en los grupos iguales hasta llegar hasta la cantidad con la que empezamos. En este caso, 6. A ver, entonces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y 6. Entonces, 6 dividido por 3 es igual a, correcto, 2. La respuesta es 2. ¿Se fijaron la diferencia? Empecé uno por uno repartiendo a cada grupo hasta llegar a mi total, que era el 6. Muy bien. La tercera estrategia que vamos a aprender de la división, separar en grupos iguales. Excelente, es matriz, pero hay unas pequeñas diferencias que quiero explicarles con la matriz cuando vamos a dividir. Para empezar, cuando estábamos multiplicando, las filas eran los grupos y las columnas eran la cantidad en cada grupo. Pero cuando estamos dividiendo, las columnas son los grupos y las filas nos dice cuánto hay en cada grupo. Entonces, las filas resultan ser la respuesta a la división. División, separar en grupos iguales. Vamos a ver el mismo ejemplo que hemos llevado hasta ahora. Entonces tenemos 6 dividido por 3. Entonces, para ayudarnos, ya se han fijado que he usado el mismo color, el rosita y el verde para ayudarnos. Así que yo tengo que tomar 6 y dividirlo entre 3 grupos iguales. Y en este caso voy a usar unas galletitas para hacer nuestro ejemplo. A ver, entonces aquí tengo una galletita para nuestro primer grupo, 2 galletitas para nuestro segundo grupo y 3 galletitas para nuestro tercer grupo. Así que pueden ver, vamos, 1, 2, 3. Van a ver 3 columnas verticales y no sabemos cuántas filas vamos a tener, ¿verdad? Tenemos que contar empezando con 0 hasta llegar a nuestro dividendo, que viene siendo el total. Entonces, no podemos pasarnos de las 6 galletitas. Vamos a tener que compartirlas igualmente en cada columna hasta llegar a nuestro total o dividendo, que en este caso viene siendo 6. Entonces, voy a contar empezando de nuevo. Sé que no me puedo pasar de 6. Ya sé que tengo 3 grupos, 3 columnas, 1, 2, 3. Ahora voy a ir agregando filas hasta que yo llegue a 6. Vamos a empezar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 y 6. Entonces, ya me puedo detener ahí. Si mi dividendo en vez de 6 fuera 12, tendría que ir agregando más galletitas a cada columna hasta llegar al 12. Porque recuerden, cuando estamos dividiendo, tenemos una cantidad total con la que empezamos, ¿verdad? No podemos dar y repartir ni en grupos iguales, ni en filas y columnas, una cantidad que no existe. Entonces, por eso nos paramos ahí en 6. A ver, entonces 6 dividido por 3, 1, 2, 3, nos da un resultado de, vamos a ver, vamos a primero identificar los grupos. Aquí está un grupo, 2 grupos y 3 grupos. ¿Vieron qué fácil es la división? División, separar en grupos iguales. Muy bien. Ahora, ya sabemos que tenemos 3 grupos, eso lo sabíamos porque pusimos nuestras columnas muy rectas y nuestras filas muy rectas, una vertical y la otra horizontal. Ahora vamos a ver cuánto hay en cada grupo. Una galletita, 2. Una, 2. Una, 2. Entonces, niños y niñas, 6 dividido por 3, una vez más, lo acabamos de comprobar con otra estrategia, es 2. ¿Listos para aprender la última estrategia de división? División, separar en grupos iguales. Ok, vamos a ver. Otra vez, una ecuación. Les dije que era muy similar a la multiplicación. Entonces, tomando el mismo ejemplo de 3 por 2 es igual a 6, sabemos que el total, la cantidad con la que empezamos, se llama dividendo. ¿Pueden decir esa palabra? Dividendo. Entonces, en la división, empezamos con el dividendo. En este caso, el dividendo es 6. Y luego tenemos que saber cuántos grupos o partes hay, en cuántas partes vamos a dividir. En este caso, nuestro ejemplo es 3. Entonces, 6 dividido por 3 es igual al cociente. Pueden decir cociente, y no estoy hablando de nada en la cocina. Cociente es la cantidad que le toca a cada parte. ¿Ok? Entonces, aquí en este caso ya sabemos, después de 4 ejemplos, 6 dividido por 3 son 2. ¿Pueden ver la similitud entre la división? Aquí está este factor, aquí está este factor, y aquí el total y el total son la misma cantidad, simplemente en diferente posición de la ecuación. Así que, por eso se llaman la multiplicación y la división. División, separar en grupos iguales. Operaciones inversas, opuestas. Vamos a continuar. Ahora vamos a ver un ejemplo más a fondo. Aquí tenemos 15 dividido por 3. Nuestra estrategia va a ser sustracción repetida. Entonces, eso quiere decir que yo voy a restar hasta llegar a 0 y voy a ver cuántos grupos de 3 pude o tengo que sustraer. Muy bien. Para ayudarme voy a agarrar mi plumón. Muy bien, 15 dividido por 3. Pues ya sé que empiezo con el total o el dividendo y le resto 3. 15 menos 3 son 12. Y aquí en mi dibujo, no, pues 12. Aquí en mi dibujo yo sé que puedo quitar 3. 3. Quito 3. Muy bien. 1, 2, 3. Ahora tengo 15 menos 3 son 12. ¿He terminado? No. Tengo que volver a restar 3 porque tengo que llegar hasta 0. 12 menos 3 más. 1, 2, 3. Me quedan 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Son 9. Entonces vuelvo a restar 3. 9 menos 3. 1, 2, 3. Son 6. Y 6 menos otro grupo de a 3. 1, 2, 3 son 3. Y 3 menos 3. 1, 2, 3. Finalmente es 0. Bueno, y aquí me faltó poner aquí el 3, pero muy bien. Entonces, y este fue un error para no confundirnos. Muy bien. Entonces, podemos ver aquí cuántas veces restamos 3 para llegar. ¿Cuántos grupos de 3 tuvimos? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grupos de 3, 5. Entonces, nuestro resultado 15 dividido por 3 son 5. Exactamente. ¿Vieron cómo pudo restar? Y después conté cuántos grupos de 3 resté. Si querían comprobarlo con nuestro dibujo acá usando las manzanas, circularíamos 1, 2, 3, 4 y 5. Y ahí está. Así como es de costumbre, quiero dejarles con algo para que lo intenten ustedes en casa. Para mañana, para representar la división, separar en grupos iguales. Con sustracción repetida, quiero que resuelvan este problema. 12 dividido por 4. El dividendo, el total son 12 dividido por 4. Pueden ir a caminar, recolectar florecitas, palitos o rocas para ayudarles con un dibujo, pero recuerden que van a restar grupos iguales de 4. Y mañana nos juntamos de nuevo para ver los resultados. Bueno, niños y niñas, hemos llegado hasta el final de nuestra lección. Su trabajo el día de hoy era poder nombrar diferentes estrategias para dividir y para representar la división. Separar en grupos iguales. Hoy nos enfocamos en sustracción repetida, restando grupos iguales hasta llegar a 0 y ver cuántos nos tomó. Mañana nos vamos a enfocar en algo muy similar, grupos iguales. Me encantó que me hayan acompañado y nos vemos hasta la próxima. Adiós.